Hello everyone, welcome to Bitcoin Not Crypto. My name is Forrest Stevens. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about whether or not you should spend your Bitcoin. This is a very controversial topic, and I have a few great examples of people that do spend their Bitcoin and how it benefits them. And I will also talk about the downsides of spending your Bitcoin. Now, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a financial planner, so none of this is accounting, legal, financial advice, none of that. If you need any of that, you need to talk to professionals. Before I get into today's episode, though, I do want to tell you about where I personally buy all of my Bitcoin, which is the Bitcoin Well. They have the lowest spreads in Canada. They're also available in the States. They're privacy focused with a great non-KYC option. And you get free rewards if you sign up with my link in the description. You'll actually get to throw some coins in the Bitcoin Well and you get rewarded free Satoshis via the Lightning Network. They have a 0% fee swap between Lightning and on-chain Bitcoin. They're also a non-custodial platform. So when you buy Bitcoin, they never hold it for you. It goes directly to your wallet in the most secure fashion. So check them out, link in the description. It's an affiliate link, so we get a small kickback on this channel. You get some free rewards for signing up using my link. And now on to the video. Now, I'm a believer that there are occasions where you do want to spend Bitcoin, but before I get into those occasions in those specific scenarios, I'm going to steelman this argument and tell you about why you shouldn't spend your Bitcoin, which I think most people will agree with. Now, the reason you shouldn't is because Bitcoin is an appreciating asset. It's a sound money with a limited supply and a fixed issuance that's lower than the stock to flow of gold. Now, what stock to flow is basically stock is accounting for the amount of a commodity. You could talk about stock to flow with commodities like gold, oil, Bitcoin, even currencies, real estate, basically any asset. That's the stock is what is currently available, and the flow is what is coming into the market. If you think about stock to flow and you think about Bitcoin, Bitcoin's new flow is less than the issuance and less than the mining of gold. And gold is kind of a representation of a previous hard money or sound money. So it has a pretty good stock to flow, and that's because the stock of gold is so high. There's so much gold being held that it's hard to increase the total amount because of how much is already being held and because of the difficulty of mining gold. Now, it does fluctuate. It's between 1% to 2%, and it's not programmed in its issuance. So there's a few things going against it when you compare it to Bitcoin. That's for another debate, Bitcoin versus gold. But Bitcoin now has less flow into the current stock than gold does. So it's an even harder, sounder money because of that. And then if you compare it to something like dollars here in Canada, the United States, wherever you might be, the increase in the amount of currency units from your nation is going to be increasing way higher, a lot higher percentage in the stock to flow than Bitcoin would be. And when you think about what happens when there's a more increase of something like dollars are a market good. And they compare them, you have to compare it to whatever you need to buy, goods and services that are built on commodities and inputs and all of these other things. And if the currency is increasing in the amount of it, then because it's a market good and a demand for those dollars basically stays relatively the same, if you increase the supply, the value of those goes down because there's more of them. And so the ability to buy things with that, you need more of them to buy the same amount of goods if those goods haven't increased in their stock to flow in the same ratio as the dollars have. So there's a huge incentive to switch over to a hard money standard or to assets that perform better than the dollar. So we'll get back to that and how that ties into why you wouldn't want to spend your Bitcoin. But I want to explain one other concept first, which is an idea, I think there's a term for it called coinflation, but it's basically pre-60 something, there used to be a certain amount of silver in Canadian and American dimes and quarters. And those, when they stopped including silver in those coins, what happened was they were taken out of circulation by individuals who received them. My grandma, for instance, she, as part of my inheritance, gave me a big teapot full of old quarters. And some of them had silver in them. And the reason was because she recognized that that quarter was worth more than 25 cents because of the actual precious metal in there, the silver. So there's this idea that a currency that is more valuable, if a currency gets debased by the actual value going into it, and our currency is worth nothing, right? Like the quarters we have now is the metals are worth basically nothing. Paper dollars are worth nothing. They're backed by nothing. They're backed by the force of a government basically demanding those dollars in tax revenue. And nothing else. There's nothing else really behind those currency units. And so there's this idea of hard money or sounder money or more valuable money being taken out of circulation and people holding on to that and spending the less valuable money. So we can relate that to Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin are those silver quarters. You're taking that Bitcoin out and you're spending, as long as people are willing to accept fiat, these worthless quarters, these worthless paper notes, you're more incentivized to hold the harder money and to give and use that weaker currency and get rid of it because it really doesn't have as much value. Okay, so that combined with basically the stock to flow of the harder asset of Bitcoin explains why you would want to hold your Bitcoin and not spend it. And to further put a pin on that point, it is just the fact that Bitcoin is a harder sounder money that is going to increase in its pricing ability, in its ability to buy more goods over time. And your currency, your national currency, is going to decrease, so you might as well get rid of it. You might as well spend it. Now, here is the reason why you would want to spend your Bitcoin. You would want to spend your Bitcoin if you have adopted a Bitcoin standard. The thing about that is basically, if you don't have any fiat left. If you don't have any fiat left, you have no choice but to spend your Bitcoin if that's all you hold. And the reason you would want to do that is because that gives you more time holding this harder asset that is going to appreciate over time. Now, yes, Bitcoin is incredibly volatile, so you have to be aware of that. And there's kind of a degree, maybe some people have a little bit of fiat and then they use that and then they hold a lot of their wealth in Bitcoin. But if you hold any fiat, you're short Bitcoin, right? If you hold all Bitcoin, and there are different ways to do this, you could pay your bills through something like Bitcoin Well, which was a sponsor of this show, or you could use, I think, in different countries, I think maybe Strike has this ability, Fold, even ShakePay here in Canada is another option. There are ways to pay your bills through Bitcoin. And there's also the ability to use something like BitRefill, which allows you to buy gift cards and even prepaid Visas and MasterCards and with your Bitcoin and use those for whatever needs and whatever shopping you might need to do. The reason you would do this is because you get to hold more Bitcoin, right? If you have to hold some fiat that you're paying bills with and that you're using as your currency, then you're short that amount of fiat that you could be holding in Bitcoin, and you could be getting that price appreciation. Now, there's a good example of what I just explained. Ben from BTC Sessions is doing exactly this. He's living on a Bitcoin standard. He uses BitRefill. I'm sure he probably uses something like Bitcoin Well to pay his bills as well, electricity, whatever have you. Okay, so the other thing, and this is why I mentioned at the beginning of the show that I'm not an accountant and I will be talking about some sort of tax implications. Now, depending on your jurisdiction, there will be tax implications of spending your Bitcoin, which is another reason that people say, why would I want to spend my Bitcoin? Well, here in Canada, and I believe in the States as well, it's very similar, but I will talk in Canada and you need to look it up for your exact region. But here in Canada, you pay capital gains tax on 50% of the appreciation of your asset, and that is for cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin. So if your Bitcoin goes up, then you have to, the amount that it goes up, 50% of that gets added to your income tax, and you get taxed on it depending on your income tax bracket. Now, that just means that you've made a profit. Yes, part of that profit gets taken away by taxes, and this also allows for a little bit of kind of flexibility with the volatility of Bitcoin, because if you're 100% Bitcoin and you're needing to spend that Bitcoin on bills and whatever, if in that time of buying Bitcoin, the volatility takes it lower than the purchase price, then when you use it, you're actually having a capital loss, which goes against your taxes and against your capital gains. So in this way, you could possibly even out, although with Bitcoin, obviously, you're probably going to have more capital gains than capital losses, which just means basically the more you hold it, the longer you hold it, the occasional time you'll use it, you will have capital gains, which means that you'll have made money as opposed to if you were holding fiat. So it balances out, and I think it probably balances out on the positive side, holding more Bitcoin and even using and spending that Bitcoin as opposed to having fiat. Now, maybe there's a bit of a balance of having a very small amount of fiat and using that instead and not having any of the capital gains and any of the tax headaches. I mean, there's also the buying and spending of that and keeping track of that, although there are some companies that do that now for you. There are accountants who are aware of this and can deal with that. And then there's some possible ways of even doing that yourself as well. So there is just sort of that complication, which might deter people as well, but it's something to consider, the fact that you are not short Bitcoin. Now, there's another example, Jack Mallers, who instead of spending his Bitcoin right away and buying sort of gift cards or paying bills through Bitcoin, he uses a credit card. Now, a credit card basically has a 30-day grace period before they start charging you interest. So what he does is he uses his credit card for all of his payments, and then at the end of the month when his credit card bill is due, he pays that off with Bitcoin. So it's just that once a month that he's using Bitcoin, and he's using this fiat system, this layer 2 or layer 3 on fiat, the credit card, and he's able to hold Bitcoin longer. And then, yes, he does have to deal with the capital gains and capital losses and the tax headache that might come with that, but he's able to hold Bitcoin a month more than if he had some fiat to pay that credit card bill off instead. So there's some serious options there. I think Jack Mallers' way of doing it, having a credit card, kind of using the fiat system, I think that's honestly a good idea. And it's almost something that I'm basically doing. Like, I have enough fiat because my rent is taken out in it. Like, that's basically it. Everything else is in Bitcoin, and a little bit in MicroStrategy and things like this, like Bitcoin and in my registered accounts, Bitcoin sort of derivatives. So I think it's something to consider. It's something to really think about, those two examples, Ben at BTC Sessions and Jack Mallers, and the way they do it, and the way that you can spend your Bitcoin in a way that allows you to hold Bitcoin longer and get that price appreciation of Bitcoin, because we all know in the long term it's going up. Yes, this is a more short-term time horizon, even a month of using your credit card and then paying it off at the end of the month. Maybe in that month, it's really hard to predict, basically, if you're going to get that price appreciation. But we know that it's very hard to time Bitcoin, and that you basically have to be in Bitcoin to get the random couple of weeks of price appreciation that happens very rapidly, because otherwise Bitcoin moves kind of sideways and down, and then it jacks up in its price. It just kind of goes wild, and you need to be in a position. You can't time before that happens for the most case, unless you're the 1% of traders that can do that. So for most people, it makes a lot of sense to just hold Bitcoin long term. And maybe this is a way of being able to hold more Bitcoin longer term, even though it requires you to spend your Bitcoin. Another note on why you might want to spend your Bitcoin is the fact that it encourages merchant adoption and allows for circular economies and more people joining the network. Bitcoin appreciates in value because its network grows. This is like a financial virus or like a social networking platform. It becomes more valuable the more people that use it and the more people that use it. And right, and there's multiple use cases, right? There's the use case of it being a store of value and just holding your money in it. That is a use case. The other use case is the next use case of currency, which is as a medium of exchange. And this allows businesses to become more profitable. It allows conversations to happen as you spend your Bitcoin in person or even online. It just increases the network effect of Bitcoin itself, which increases the value long term. So there might be sort of a tinge of selfishness in the use of spending Bitcoin because you're encouraging it to continue and grow, and that allows your Bitcoin to increase in value. But there's the sort of selflessness of it, of realizing, okay, well, I bought something, you know, I bought some, I bought in chocolate fino, I bought some gelato with Bitcoin. Now that gelato cost me a lot more than if I would have just used dollars. At the time, I got a 10% discount, but at the time, Bitcoin was trading at, you know, 60,000. Now it's 90,000. So I've lost some money on that, but I'm not going to be crying about the percentage that I've lost on that, because I could have easily, and I did actually, in fact, I had some fiat on the side that I just bought that Bitcoin back at the time, but I still had that networking effect of Bitcoin being spread out and being used by more and more people. So that is one thing to consider as well. Before I let you go, I want to tell you about a film that I am producing and that I am funding with Bitcoin. It's called The Land of Volcanoes in Bitcoin, and it's about El Salvador's historic adoption of Bitcoin as legal tender. And I will actually be going to El Salvador and filming there and kind of showing the past of El Salvador, the present, and the future based on how Bitcoin has affected that country. And I am funding it through Geyser Fund, which is a Bitcoin-only crowdfunding platform. So check out the link in the description. If you want to spend Bitcoin for your first time, you can do so over the Lightning Network by donating to my film to make that happen. So thanks everybody for watching. If you have any questions, if I didn't cover something in a way that was comprehensive to you, I'm happy to explain further in the comment section. And if you have any further questions, want to talk to me directly, I actually do one-on-one free calls about anything about Bitcoin Well, about anything basically that you want to talk about Bitcoin related. And the link for that is through the Discord. Join the Discord through the description. And then one of the channels has my link for my scheduler, and you can book a free call with me. The Discord's popping off too. It's starting to gain some traction, and there's some interesting folks in there talking about Bitcoin and MicroStrategy and all sorts of things. So join that up, and we'll see you there and on the next video.